timeline where Alex Jones is right. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, shitposters, activists, and people of the internet, thank you for joining for another episode of O'Donnell for Liberty. As always, I'm your host, Justin. Before we get started, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button and turn on notifications to keep up to date with all of our future content. And if you enjoy the program, you can be an early supporter by heading over to our Patreon link in the description and joining the production team. If you want to keep in touch between shows, you can follow me on social media and join our community Discord channel. Those links are also in the description of the video and on all the audio podcasts. Tonight, we're going to be talking Libertarian Party inside baseball, the drama, the infighting, the suspension, and most importantly, the future. We're going to take some questions. So make sure you hit that like button, leave some comments, and tell us what you think in the chat, and give a warm welcome to tonight's guest candidate for the Libertarian National Committee Chair, Angela McArdle. Angela, thank you for joining us tonight. How's it going?
It's going all right. Thanks for having me on.
So fill everyone in, because we get a real diverse audience here, because we do a lot of shows just about crypto and not about LP politics, and not everyone's fully on board with libertarian politics yet. What is it you're running for? What is your position in the party, and what's your history in the Libertarian Party?
Oh boy. So I chair the Libertarian Party of Los Angeles County. That is the thing that I am the most committed to. I am also on the executive committee for the California LP. For those of you who aren't active in libertarian politics, that just means I basically sit on the board of a state-level political party. And I am running for the Libertarian Party National Committee Chair position, and that's in 2022 in Reno, where that happens. There's a ton of other stuff I do. You know, I chair the California Mises Caucus Political Action Committee. I'm on the board for the National Mises Caucus, and I'm a state organizer, all kinds of fun stuff.
So why did you want to run for the worst position in the world, chair of the National Party?
I just want to affirm that statement and say that it is the worst position in the world. That is not an exaggeration. It is an unpaid position. It is absolutely thankless and guaranteed that people will hate me. And they already do. So
comes with the territory. I mean, you're a libertarian. I don't think you're doing it right if somebody doesn't hate you.
Yes, that's correct. I agree with that. And I will drink the tears of my enemies, and I will nourish myself upon them. But, why do I want the most thankless job in the world? It's not being done right, and someone's got to do it. And I can do it. I can stand it. I can stomach it. I can get through it. And I think I can actually make some progress on it. So I'm willing to do it. So I'm, throwing myself in that fire.
So make progress. What is it that's not being done that you think should be done? Like, okay. I used to serve on the LNC myself. I was a regional representative for Region 8, all of New England, New York, and New Jersey. And I served for 2 terms before I chose not to run for a 3rd term, because it was miserable to me. Yeah. What is it that you think the LNC is not doing that it should be doing, that it could be doing, that it is doing, that it shouldn't be doing, that makes you want to do it?
There's so many things. I'm going to try not to bore everyone to death with a long list, but you're going to get a long list. Here it comes. The thing that the Mises Caucus people are upset about, which I agree with, is a lack of principled libertarian messaging. So I would like to change that. And people, there's mixed views about how important is Twitter. There's a lot more things that I do with my time than be on Twitter. I apologize, everyone. I haven't been on social media as much in the past couple of days because I'm overwhelmed. But when you are interested in the Libertarian Party and you go to the Google machine and you type in Libertarian Party, the first thing that's going to pop up is the National Libertarian Party. And on that first page, it's going to be their Twitter. And when it's an embarrassing train wreck and it doesn't represent libertarian values, that's the very first, most outward-facing thing people who are new to the party see. And it turns them off. And I do think that it's important to correct that.
Well, how can you go forth with just like, we need to correct that, when we've kind of reached a point where we're at a deciding point, I think, in libertarian politics of what is a libertarian. But to this point, there really hasn't been a consensus of what is libertarian ideology, with a lot of controversial issues. And we're seeing like the big political issues of the day are things that the Libertarian Party has specifically for its history not taken a stance on because libertarians can't agree on them. So how does the Libertarian Party come to the forefront of the political debate when the Libertarian Party can't agree what side to take in the abortion debate, when that's the big issue right now, or the Libertarian Party can't make a decision on where to come down on the open borders versus closed borders debate, because libertarians have good faith views on both issues on both sides, and freedom of movement and immigration, especially with refugee crises coming from the United States global wars, are a big issue right now. So what does the Libertarian Party have to make a decision on where it stands on these things, or can it continue to be agnostic on certain issues even when those are the issues that people care about?
I think, well, those are two of the issues that people care
Right.
about. And I think that it's totally within our rights to represent ourselves as having more than one opinion about them. But we want to put forth the best possible version of those opinions and say that people are arguing them in good faith and that there are libertarian positions for both. But you know what inspired me to take up this mantle was the absolute failure to speak out against lockdowns. And if people want to argue and say that libertarians that they have multiple views on lockdowns.
Well, Cato makes that argument.
Yeah. I'm going to say, go join Cato. I'm not going to be demanding anybody, return their dues payments or officially quit, but you don't need to renew if you're pro lockdown, because that is not what we're about by any means.
Even Reason magazine has been starting to take a turn in a more authoritarian approach on lockdowns and vaccine mandates lately.
Oh, geez. I've made some good headway with Reason, and I'd like to keep my good relationship with them. So I would like to plead with them diplomatically to please consider that bowing to those narratives and that social pressure is not going to further their cause. And it's also not going to help them develop their brand or cultivate a wider audience. You don't convince people to be libertarian by compromising all of your principles until you're no longer libertarian. You just need to improve your messaging and be courageous.
And that's one of the things I've taken to heart in my time in the Libertarian Party, and my transition from just regular conservative Republican to the point where I've grown to like a hardcore anarchist. I don't even call myself an anarcho-capitalist. I think capitalism is still a state-based system. But like I believe there is no role for government in human life and human freedom. And I don't change my tune. I speak my values pure and raw, and I don't care who I piss off. And it gets to the point where people like the fakertarians and the pragmatic caucus stalwarts are telling people to leave the Libertarian Party because of my tweets, as if I'm a representative of the Libertarian Party.
Goodbye. Yeah, it's ridiculous. We can't be so sensitive that one individual who used to be on the LNC now represents everyone. And if you're offended by his statements, then you need to leave the party. Like, this is ridiculous. I would draw a big distinction between people who used to serve on the LNC and the official account,
Well, even then, a lot of the problem with the official account is that they don't take a position on anything.
I know.
Or if they do, it's too late. Or when they finally have something to say, it's watered down and broken and completely misses the point.
Okay, so there's a real reason that this is part of. So there are several pieces to this problem. One is that we are not rooted in our principles right now. We are too busy chasing the culture and wanting to appease people who don't like us. And that's not a good strategy, because if you're in a business and you're selling a product, you want your product to match your target demographic. And our product doesn't match our target demographic. Well, that's another thing. We don't even know who our target demographic is. That's kind of embarrassing. You don't say, I've been selling cookies, cookies made with gluten. I think I want to go to the carnivore community and set up shop there and force cookie. Like, that's madness. And that's sort of what we've been doing at the national level. So let's fix that. But also why we have such bad culture. We've saddled ourselves with operating procedures manual, all these hoops that we have to jump through to get your tweet approved and this approved and that approved and messaging, because none of us trust each other. And we all think that the rest of us are a bunch of hacks and we don't know what we're doing. Some of us are a bunch of hacks. So we can't ever, just say, hey, you know what? You interviewed for this role. We vetted you. We trust you. Go and do it. That doesn't happen. Like, that doesn't exist at the national level right now. And that's part of why our messaging sucks and why things are untimely. And I definitely want to see that changed.
So how do you fix that? I mean, the policy manual and the policies and procedures and Robert's Rules of Order and the bylaws, they're a big hang up to actually moving forward with libertarian messaging and libertarian ideals. But how do you fix that as chair? How do you fix that by running for chair? Because you're still going to have the rules to deal with. You're still going to have the rules lawyers that win their regional seats. You're still going to have people who care more about if there's a comma in the right place in an obscure policy manual provision as opposed to actually fixing the problem. And time again, like, during my terms on the LNC, it was myself and John Phillips who were always like, damn be the rules, we need to do a thing, and finding a way to work around the rules. But since then, it seems like the LNC has become so hung up on their rules that they rules lawyer every action that they take and are prohibit themselves from ever doing anything meaningful because of the rules.
Yeah, it's a huge problem. It's a cultural problem. So part of that is going to be able to, it's going to change with me, because I'm not going to beat people over the head with rules, and I'm going to set a much better example. I am a rules person. I work as a paralegal in civil litigation. Like, I can minutia anyone to death, but it's not necessary. And I don't think that it's helpful. So we're not going to be doing that. And another big part of it is that other people who get elected, like, it's not just me running for LNC chair. It's not the Angela show. There's a whole bunch of people who are running who are on the same page with me. And we already talk on a regular basis and are developing our own workplace culture that is not rule obsessed. It's not full of gamesmanship. Like, you got to cultivate trust. That's what we have in LA County and to a certain degree in California, so that we're not all out to try to screw each other over and one up each other. You got to develop like trust and a good workplace culture if you want to overcome all this like rules pathology. Robert's Rules of Order is a pathology. It is an obsession for people. Very unhealthy.
So how do we get rid of Robert's Rules of Order? I mean, there's other things, the Masons, the Democratic Rules of Order, other books that do exist that are significantly shorter, easier to read, easier to comprehend, and easier to govern. Why not make a push to get rid of Roberts and make the floor for entry and the barrier to entry into parliamentarianism easier?
I've considered it. I think that's not the hill I'm going to die on in this term. But for other people who want to start exploring that option, I encourage them to do so. But you're going to have to change the opinion of a lot of delegates before we can push that through.
That might be the quickest way to lose Karen Ann's endorsement too.
Right. And so, like, I'm fine working with Robert's Rules of Order because for me, it's not a barrier to entry and I have a good grasp of it. For people who disagree, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to go out and you're going to have to whip the other people in the party who participate, not just a bunch of people who randomly show up at convention. Because when you have that happen and a populist groundswell of people vote for something that they're not involved in, that can kind of screw the rest of the party, because the ones who do the work are the ones who should be making decisions. But,
well, that's the argument that's being used against the Mises Caucus and against even your run and the people who support you, is the old timers, the Prags, are saying the Mises Caucus are just a groundswell of populist support of people who haven't historically done the work and haven't been around long enough.
I've been state party secretary in California. I've been on the executive committee. I think I was in 7 committees when I was secretary. I've been on almost every single state level committee in California. I chair the party. I have not missed a single meeting while campaigning for LNC chair in California, and I won't. I have not missed a single one. I had to remote in for one of my LA County calls one time from a plane. And you have seen, like, you will not find, even if I've been in the hospital, I haven't missed my meetings. So you won't find that from me. And the culture in the Mises Caucus has been that we have been taking over, but also creating, out of dead space, new county affiliates. We've got people learning Robert's Rules of Order and monthly trainings. We've got candidate and campaign trainings happening. Those have been a little bit slower trickling in. Especially in California, like our culture within the caucus is you get in, you get sort of vetted, and then you get immediately connected with your county level parties and active at the state. So I think at first it was a bunch of young people who were jumping in and they had no idea what they're doing. But what I'm seeing now is caucus people really assuming leadership roles and doing the heavy lifting.
I think I used to take the opinion that, like, if your organization is so weak in support and so weak in longstanding support that it can't survive a takeover attempt, it can't survive a bunch of new blood coming in and filling your coffers with money to get their way, then you don't deserve to keep control of it anyways. I got accused during the whole LPNH debacle and fiasco in New Hampshire. There was a lot of accusations thrown out how I had worked and helped the Mises Caucus take over the party, and I didn't help anyone do shit. I had gone to one of their organizational meetings before convention with Andrew Olding, just to kind of meet people, and like we realized the fact that there was a clear divide in the party between the inner circle that had a group chat where they organized everything and everyone else who had no clue what was going on. And we went to a meeting that was being run by the Mises Caucus to meet other members of the party, and the only thing I did to help them was give them like a 5-minute rundown on Robert's Rules of Order and tell them that they should study up on parliamentary procedure. And when they swept the convention, it was my fault.
Right. See, it's everything comes. There's like all these. I'm doing the Nick Star work on his Zoom call face. Everybody wants to blame anything and everything on the Mises Caucus, and there's a lot of reasons that is not a good way to approach it. One is, well, we're going to get credit for our wins, because when you blame our wins on us, I'll take that. The other is if you need to keep your house in order. So if you're ruining your affiliate, which was the case in Nevada, hardly anybody spoke up for those guys because it wasn't just a Mises Caucus takeover of a functional affiliate. Those guys were derelict in their duties. They barely ran their state party. They did almost nothing. I don't just mean social media. I mean nothing, like at all. So handle that. I don't know what else. There's a million things I could say about that.
So we have a planned takeover. I joke about the planning of a takeover with my own county affiliate here in New Hampshire, the Southern New Hampshire Libertarian Party, which is 2 counties, because unlike Los Angeles, which is bigger than most states, we're a really small state and our counties aren't that big. But we, about a year and a half ago, elected an EC. I founded the county party 4 years ago. I was the first chair of the affiliate. I took all of the effort in the world to wrangle 10 libertarians together into a room to form a county affiliate. And then over the course of 4 years of me not being in charge, because I'm not the best person to be in charge, and I recognize that, I found somebody else to be chair, managed to grow it to the largest affiliate in the state, and like 80% of the state party membership was a member of that county affiliate at that point, with rapid growth and huge growth. In about a year and a half ago, we elected a new EC, people who'd shown up, a couple new movers, including Valerie Sarwark and Richard Manzo, who were hugely popular at the time because of their name or their involvement in the Joe Jorgensen campaign. And since then, like immediately after COVID became a thing, they shut down. They stopped doing anything. There hasn't been a single event held in over a year. The only post they made on social media was to support Gilletta Jarvis's attempted coup of the state party, and canceled the county convention. They canceled the county convention and haven't called a new one. And so the Mises Caucus members, and not just Mises Caucus members, other members of the state party in the county have gotten together to call a special convention to just simply have a vote of no confidence in the board and replace them. And in the past 8 months since the new EC was elected at the state party, they've made repeated attempts to reach out to Valerie Sarwark, Richard Manzo, and the board of the county party, and they've simply refused to acknowledge them. So if people are going to just take their ball and go home and quit, they can't be mad when they lose their ball.
Right. It's like, oh, well, the Mises Caucus did XYZ. Yeah, but anyone would have done that in this situation who had a core of decency and integrity. It's not just like, oh, the Mises Caucus took us over. Someone came and picked up, the remnants of some husk of an organization that you abandoned. That's what it sounds like is happening in your county. And it's not just the Mises Caucus, but that's a more fun, exciting way to spin it on social media so that the haters get, clutch their pearls. And
Andrew Olding in the comments has a really good point here. Like, how can we have trust in the Libertarian National Committee when the chair of the affiliate support committee has let her own county affiliate die to inactivity?
I feel like, so everybody always wants to ask about what I want to do for the LNC when I'm in charge. Totally valid question, but I feel that the best way to campaign when you're running for a position at one level is to demonstrate the work that you've done at the lower level. And yeah, Valerie should do that. That's what I'm doing in LA County. Like you don't want to abandon what you're working on now to pursue something larger. And I would caution other people who are running for LNC positions or who already have them, like get your house in order and make sure you're not dumping other responsibilities just because the reality is for a lot of people this is just like a little like star that they can put on their social media name badge. Other than that, it's meaningless, which is sad.
I mean, I wish I had the video to show you, but at our annual convention where we elected the Mises executive committee here in New Hampshire, Andrew Olding, who's commenting in chat, actually gave a phenomenal speech about how the worst part of the Libertarian Party is the title chasers. People who run for positions just so they can put it on their resume and then never do a goddamn thing.
It's so frustrating. And that's what I see a lot of the old guard has done. We've got some people who, like Jay Jones in LA County, he's like in his late 60s. The man doesn't even have a smartphone. He has a monthly, like a regular meetup that's packed every month. And he was able to like continue it through all of the like mandated BS in California and even during lockdowns. There are people like him that exist, but there are a lot of people who just want to hold on to a committee title or something and just absolutely just drag everyone else through misery and do nothing. And I find that most of them don't have much of a life outside of the LP. That's not a huge criticism because I mean, that's a double-edged sword because neither do I anymore. But for them, it's a social club. They're not as, maybe they're burned out on activism. Maybe they were never into it to begin with. And so it never meant to them what it means to you or what it means to me.
Well, I honestly feel like that's a problem with the liberty movement in general, not just the Libertarian Party, but even Republican Liberty Caucuses and the non-voters, the agorists, the voluntarists, and all them. And it's been one of my biggest criticisms of the Free State Project for a long time, because I myself am not a Free Stater. I'm Free State adjacent because I live in New Hampshire and I'm a Libertarian, and a lot of my friends happen to be Free Staters because they're the people who I share values with and get along with, whatever. But to me, it's been an epidemic of people who come to libertarian ideology tend to be on the fringe. It is a fringe movement. It is a fringe ideology. You get fringe people. There are a couple different paths on how people come to libertarian ideology. The majority of people that I've encountered come to libertarian thought by reading books and focusing and being hyperlogical. We have a huge overrepresentation of software programmers and engineers and a huge underrepresentation of women and people in the service industry and people in sales and communications, because we tend to attract people who think logically and are like, I hate to say it, Asperger was probably a libertarian term at one point. Yeah. But the Free State Project, to me, the notion was, let's get all those people to uproot their lives, move across the country for a political ideology. And in pitching that idea, you're not going to get the people who have family ties, who have community ties, who have stable work lives. You're going to get people who have nothing to lose where they are, who don't have anything holding them where they are, and who are willing to pick up everything and just move across the country for a political ideology. You're going to get the fringe of the fringe. And it tends to be people who lack communication skills, lack empathetic relationship building skills, and just leads to disharmony and disunity. But we see that in the political party as well. Within the Libertarian Party, we see people who are willing to forego the immediate success of running as a Republican or as a Democrat and having their policies put into play immediately, and running as a libertarian and supporting Libertarian Party politics as opposed to just libertarian policies in politics. And we get another fringe of the fringe. And it tends to be those people who, like, I once asked at a convention, I'm like, raise your hand if your best friend is not a libertarian. Nobody. Yeah. People use the Libertarian Party as a social organization more than they do as an activist organization. Yes. And we see that every time, like, there's a big convention, the state pulls out all the works to have a huge state convention. It's not just people in that state and that region who go. You'll see all the, who's going to Wyoming this month for the convention? It's going to be huge. Can't wait to see all my friends from across the country. I'm sorry, what the hell does the Libertarian Party of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania care about what happens to the Wyoming State Party? But they're sending a delegation to Wyoming for the party.
Right. Well, it is, yeah, it is a social club. And, it's like it cuts both ways. I'm glad for the social element because I want to hang out with people who share my values. And that's been something that has changed for me painfully in the past few years as politics have really invaded and completely taken over everything else culturally. But we do need to do better about drawing the distinction between the social element of it and the work, because the two tend to blend together in such a way that it makes work become less important.
And beyond that, what I see is when you treat the party as a social movement, as your social hub and your friends and your family, instead of a political apparatus in which you're working as an activist, whenever there is something controversial that happens within the party, the ripple effects of the drama just cascade.
Yes.
And friendships get destroyed over tiny disagreements. And oftentimes, people are drawing lines in the sands about who their friends are and destroying their relationships that they've spent years building within the party over something that the LNC does that didn't involve them.
Right. Part of this, I think, that part of the root of the problem is that the Liberty movement is a complainers club. We all hate the government. Great. We're all on board with hating the government. But the government is this huge, monstrous, kind of shadowy entity because it's so big and nebulous that it's like, okay, well, we know what the White House is, the Capitol building, furry horn takeover. But there's more to it, right? And it seems insurmountable. And so we're like, well, we've done a shit job of fighting it in the last 50 years. So I hate it, and someone's like, I hate it too. And then that becomes kind of the crux of everything. It's just like, we just hate it. And so we feel discouraged, like we'll never beat it. So we might as well just sit around and shit talk it and, post memes. That's not the way to win anything.
So what's your opinion on the idea that a lot of people, even some Mises Caucus people, have started promoting the idea that maybe the Libertarian Party should not be focused on running candidates. If candidates want to run under the Libertarian banner, they can do so, and Libertarians can support them, but it shouldn't be the forefront of Libertarian Party groupthink and group ideology. To me, I've started to come around on that idea as I've run for office a number of times. I've seen dwindling and barely reasonable success. We've struggled to retain ballot access. We had to go to the courts to retain ballot access. I did get to call a state's attorney an idiot to his face, and the judge laughed at it. That was really fun. But I since I've stopped running for office, since I've stepped down from any leadership role in the Libertarian Party, I've seen more success.
Yeah.
By working with people who are in office. Yeah. I get the need to run people for office to keep the brand out there, keep the name out there, and get people thinking about libertarianism. But is not the correct approach to that to just focus on the nonpartisan offices that we can just win? That we can get libertarians into local offices where they can make an immediate impact on the lives of people in their community. Yes. Last night, I had a meeting with the state representative here in New Hampshire, and it's a state representative who I have criticized heavily in the past few years, someone who has gone on about Back to Blue and supporting police and Black Lives Matter being a terrorist organization and not wanting to support civil liberties and civil rights, but he's huge into health freedom. And last night, I sat down and we started working to draft a bill to repeal the state-level prohibitions on short-term medical care. And he's submitting and sponsoring a bill that I helped write to repeal the prohibitions on short-term medical in New Hampshire to actually improve health freedom. And we're getting bipartisan support. We've reached out to Democrats who want to co-sponsor it because the way we pitched it was this is going to help gig workers, Uber drivers, Uber Eats, Door Dashers, and people who are self-employed be able to actually afford healthcare.
Yes. Okay, so that's a lot. Let's unpack some of this a little bit. What was Nick I think it was Nick Sarwark's thing that he wanted to run how many candidates in 2018? Do you remember?
All of them? It was an obscene amount.
An obscene amount of candidates. That is a bad idea. Let's not do that. What I would like to see is for us to run more serious local campaigns. And there's going to be a little bit of a lurch because in order to run serious local campaigns, holy crap, you have to know how to run a campaign. And very few people in the LP know how to do that. And that is one of the reasons that we don't get more people elected. We've got a money issue, definitely, but we've got an infrastructure problem. You can't hire your best friend to be your campaign manager. That's completely insane. So we need to have actual campaign managers, and then we need to just scale back. Like you can't run 1,000 people in the LP in the same election year, because then you have no one to donate and volunteer to your campaigns. So scale that way back, and then run them in winnable races. Like, why is this so? No, I'm going to run for Congress. Well, I tell you, I've done it twice, and it was fun. And I wish that I had had better advice when I was first starting out to do this, and had someone tell me, Angela, if you're going to go big, go for city council, because that's still too big in LA. But that would have at least plugged me into my community and given me, I would have been able to fall down probably into a committee position. That would have been a much better tactical approach. And then, okay, another thing you mentioned was you're working with your state legislature. It's like the Libertarian Party in a lot of states and at the national level. It's like we're terrified of legislation. Oh my gosh. Oh, it's like literally the boogeyman under our bed. But that going out and lobbying people is really important. Why don't we try to get more representatives to term out with us? Like you're terming out, you're a liberty-leaning Republican or a Democrat or whatever. Can you change your registration, your party affiliation for just like the last 3 months of your election cycle? Just give me just a little bit, that will help us with our name too. There's like so many things we could do. Harrison Kemp in Maine, he drafts legislation, so that's really helpful.
I had Harrison on a few weeks ago to talk about a lot of the legislation that he's working with, and I'm trying to get work with John Andrews to schedule him to come on sometime to talk about what they're actually doing to implement it. But John is actually like a great example of like was it the right decision question. John is not terming out. He's not term limiting out. He switched parties because he was so frustrated with the lockdowns and the Republican support of the COVID agenda that he finally said he'd had enough, joined the Libertarian Party, and he has still had success pushing libertarian ideas in the state house. But he's running for re-election, and the state rules on the re-election are actually prohibiting him from fundraising for his re-election at the same level he could have if he was a Republican, because the Libertarians don't have a primary in Maine. And so each donor is allowed to give double the amount to a Republican or a Democrat than they could to a Libertarian. And I used to tell people whenever that issue comes up in like New Hampshire, and people are like, oh, but we can't fundraise as much if we don't accept the campaign finance. Like, it doesn't matter. You're not getting enough max donors to make a difference. Like, nobody is donating a single max donation to you. So nobody's going to donate a double max donation to you. Right. Just focus on curating the donations that you can to build as good a campaign as you can. In Maine, that's different. Their max donation is like $500.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that he should consider, and he should talk with his state party about that. And I don't know, like, how much can you flip-flop with your party affiliation? Can you switch to Republican in name only just when you're campaigning and switch when you get in? That might be the sort of massive troll that I would be okay with, but I would leave that up to their state party, where you're like, look, I'm literally only switching for ballot access to take Republican money and then switching back immediately. And there are other libertarians who are going to quote me on that and be like, I can't believe it's okay. You guys are going to be okay. You'll emotionally recover from that.
All's fair in love and war, and it is a war against the state. So it is. If you have to play dirty to beat the state, play as dirty as you can.
Yeah, that's what I think. But you're right. Like, we need to be less obsessed on running candidates just for the sake of running candidates. It needs to be purposeful, just like everything else we do. We should never be like Sisyphus pushing a rock up a hill. It's just go collect stamps or something if you just want to do something mindless.
Andrew makes another great point in chat. Going to town hall meetings is the best and easiest activism. Something you can do even if you're not elected, if you're just a voter or just a citizen. And here, it's actually a great story that Andrew reminds me of a time where the both of us lived in Nashua, New Hampshire at the time, and the city of Nashua was considering an ordinance to raise the age to possess tobacco to 21. This is before Trump had pushed the executive order to do it. But this wasn't publicized. Nobody knew it was happening. The city council was just kind of doing it behind people's backs. Andrew had gone to a city council meeting one night and just saw it on the agenda, immediately pushed it out to all the libertarians in the city, like, hey, what the hell is going on? We need to stop this. And then it was actually a Democrat it was the guy who runs New Hampshire Young Democrats who was looking for help pushing against it covertly because he didn't want his name attached to it because he was a Democrat. But he ended up getting in, like Andrew and myself and a couple of the libertarians in Nashua, in touch with a couple of the cigar shop owners who were organizing resistance to it. And we organized a mass night of testimony where a bunch of libertarians showed up to the city hall meeting to testify against the resolution. And I just remember it was hilarious when the mayor sees the packed room and he gives his opening remarks. He's like, and I'm sure there's a lot of people here to support the smoking ordinance. And we all just started giggling because then like the first 10 people to speak were all just tearing it to pieces about how awful it was. And we had been meeting with a couple of the aldermen weekly at one of the cigar bars to try and lobby them and convince them. And there was one swing vote who we thought, like, we got him, he's going to vote against it. And we watched him change his mind like 5 times during the meeting before he finally voted against it. But then there was a Democrat alderman who none of us had bothered to lobby, or none of us had bothered to talk to her because we thought she was sure in with the progressive agenda and would never hear a word we had to say. She stands up and says, I can't support this ordinance because it'll just create another law for police to racist enforce against minorities in the city. And we're like, we'll take it. Sure. Yeah. And it died. And it killed like libertarian testimony and libertarians showing up and getting involved in their city council prevented a bad law from going into effect. Now, I saw what you did with your protest in Los Angeles. You brought a freaking guillotine to city council.
I did. I did. And I announced it at the city council meeting before the protest. I did. So what we've been
How did that go over?
It went over really well. It went over shockingly well. Okay, so backstory is the city of Los Angeles. So there's a county and the city. The county is still, I haven't read the news today, so I don't know what's happened. But they're both considering vaccine passport systems so that you have to get vaccinated. There's no religious exemption so far either in order to go into any indoor business except for like a grocery store and a couple other things. Insane. So the city of Los Angeles is considering this. And so I've had every LA Libertarian Party member that I could get on the call making public comment. By the way, we're not allowed to attend public comment in person because of the Rona. So I had everybody calling up, talking about the Libertarian Party, how we were protesting, and I called up and I was like, "We're dragging a guillotine out in front of your in front of City Hall. Look for the guillotine. Our we're announcing our protest. We're giving our website. Public comment is a great time to do that." The phone was just ringing off the hook. Just random people who were listening in were pissed off and Googling us and calling me up. So yeah, I built a guillotine in my 4th story apartment where I don't have a garage. So that was exciting.
Now I think there's an important question here that like chat most certainly wants the answer to.
Yeah.
How much does it cost to build a guillotine?
I built my guillotine for under $200. Yeah. And that's
everybody.
Yeah, this is you can crowdfund this guillotine. I looked up some instructables on it and I was like, this is close, but it's not going to work for me because I drive a 4-door car and I needed it to collapse. Everybody's like, Angela, you're a pretty good administrator, but I think that my carpentry skills are way underrated in this party. So I drew it out. I drew out the specs. I worked on it. I cut the pieces. I did not want to grind metal on my balcony because it's really, really, really loud. So I did not cut metal. I used wood for the blade and I spray painted it metallic silver. I'm very sorry, everyone. Everyone's like, why didn't you? It's what's it called? Copenhagen ethic. As soon as you go out to do something, people are like, it wasn't good enough. But whatever. I built it with hinges so that it collapsed and folded into my back seat. I put wheels on it and the wheels folded in. So, we popped it out of the car when we got down there, folded it up, nailed it shut, and rolled it down there. Even the cops liked it, which is quite a stretch. Because turns out the LAPD, yeah, they kind of kill people. They're not great across the board, but they don't like vaccine passports. Neither did the fire department. Neither did the paramedics. Neither did a lot of the city workers because we were right in front of City Hall at the employee entrance. and people are coming in and out, and they're going, I got my shot, but I don't like this mandate thing, so thank you.
Right, and that's a real great example of like weird bedfellows against tyrants, because like everybody has an issue that will put them against the authoritarian regime.
Yeah.
And it's a matter of like finding your allies on those issues. And it's weird to see the cops coming around and joining our side when we've spent so long with all cops are bastards. Policing is an inherently violent institution, and like there is no such thing as a moral cop has been my stances. But I was watching a video, Asaj Harangi in New York City is doing a poster campaign where he's running around to small businesses and helping them put up posters in their windows that says, we don't discriminate against race, sexuality, gender identity, or vaccination status.
Nice.
And he's gotten NYPD officers helping him distribute the flyers to small businesses because they said they're going to refuse to enforce the vaccine passports.
Very nice. So, you know, in LA, one of the first things I did was I reached out to the sheriff's office and I was like, hey, I chair the Libertarian Party of Los Angeles County. We're really concerned about XYZ with vaccinations. Are you guys going to enforce this stuff? We need to know where you're at. They responded to me directly right away in writing and said, we will not enforce any vaccination mandates. The sheriff has been vaccinated. He thinks it's best for everyone's health to do so, and we will absolutely not enforce mandates on vaccinations. So there you go. I had to really and I'm sure that, you know, there's probably a lot of New Hampshire activists who feel this way, who are more anarchist, and it's a case in California. But I am someone who was very hardcore ACAB, and then the lockdowns happened. And I had a protest that went viral because I was telling people to wear masks to avoid police detection and made them wear a mask to avoid the cops. And they were like, they didn't like that. So LAPD reached out to me because they follow me on Twitter. Watch out, they will do that. And they were like, we want an in-person meeting with you about your protest. So I was like, yikes, okay. And I went down and I talked with them about lockdowns. And instead of going in with a FU attitude, I was just like, I'm here to talk to them. And we do need ivermectin passports. And it turns out the cops were anti-lockdown. And they were telling me how they had a secret gym and a hookup for this and a hookup for that. And they wanted to know where they could get a haircut. And of course I didn't tell the cops because that would be really dumb. But I made headway with them, and they told me that they supported me and our protest. And by the end of the meeting, I was like, fuck it, I'm going for it. And I was like, I'm going to sell you guys on libertarianism. Let's talk about the drug war. And they I didn't change any minds in my remaining 15 minutes of conversation, but I had their attention, and they were not dismissing me. They were very engaged, and I made, some good steps towards a good relationship with them. So sometimes you got to just get over yourself when dealing with law enforcement and groups that you don't like. If it's Antifa, if it's Democrats, whatever, you can make headway, but you'll never make headway if you don't even try.
When I talked to Heidi Briones the other day, she ran for Congress as a Democrat in Oregon. She's a huge universal basic income advocate, huge social progressive, and I just thought it'd be an interesting conversation. I kept pushing her and challenging her on stuff. And I finally got around to saying, what about guns? Where do you feel on guns? And her answer was, well, I've come around on the Second Amendment. I think people are going to need to defend themselves when somebody tries to force you to get a shot. I'm like, what? Yeah. So that was the crazy part to me. And then I realized, was that your push away? You recently left the Democratic Party. Was that your push? Was COVID vaccines? I mean, because it's become a partisan issue. It seems like it's right versus left on the vaccine mandates. And her answer was, I don't think it's right versus left anymore. I think we've actually transcended to authoritarian versus anti-authoritarian.
Yeah.
And I could no longer support an authoritarian partisan regime.
It's amazing. It's amazing. I hope that people listening will just take the win. So there are some people you're not going to win on every little punch card spot on your libertarian card. Just take as many as you can get. That's remarkable.
Now, one other thing I definitely did want to cover with you, and I think it's really important because you are running for LNC chair, and LNC drama has been the news. So at the LP Inside Baseball skit, let's go. The other day, The LNC met and they voted to suspend Karen Ann Harlos as secretary of the party for decorum and NAP violations and all sorts of contrived charges that takes an hour to read through the document, and the evidence doesn't support the argument made to me. What did you feel, and what was your impression coming out of that LNC meeting with how they acted and how the LNC worked up to that meeting to suspend Karen Ann?
So I was in the room when it all went down. I did attend the meeting in person. The whole thing sucked. I like Karen Ann, and she's my friend. And I care very much about her. So watching her go through the whole thing was really shitty. And I've spoken with some LNC members, and a lot of them, like, I don't buy the whole words or violence NAP thing. You need to be very careful to not give people ammunition to use against you, because we're at a place right now where there's internet bullying, there's this, there's that. It exists. Whether or not you want to say it's aggression, it exists. And I think when we get down to describing it, we get into sort of splitting hairs. Yeah.
If words are violence, then Marianne Williamson and Meghan McCain have a strong case to have me arrested. Right.
Yeah. I internet bully as many politicians as I can, and I highly recommend it to everyone else. I find it incredibly rewarding, especially Meghan McCain. Like, there are so many crying memes of her that I just can't. Like, I don't care how tasteless it is. I love those memes. But the LNC there's no Meghan McCains on the LNC. They don't exist. You know, Karen Ann Harlos isn't Meghan McCain, and neither are the people that voted her off, even though some of them are pretty scummy. Not all, but some. If I could have done anything differently, you know, I guess I would go back in time with my magic wand and tell everybody to just stop screaming at each other. One of the things that I think has contributed to this and all of the rumors swirling around it is the stupid invisible LNC list. So for people who don't know what I'm talking about, there's a list where you can email each other and on the LNC, and the public doesn't see it. And then there's a list where the public does see it. And apparently a whole bunch of horrible things happened between everyone on an email list that you and I will never get to see. So we'll never know who was the evil internet bully violating the NAP with violent words. I don't think that you should be voted off of the LNC for violent words. The way that it was put to me by some LNC members, and not all, and I did not speak to all of them, because there are at least 3 that I think would have zero interest in speaking to me. But they said at least 3.
At least 3.
At least 3. To be fair, Richard Longstreth spoke to me after the meeting in good faith, and he was not shitty to me at all. So we can hate on him for other things, but he did speak to me in a civilized manner, and I think that at least says something, even if it's a little something. I know I'm getting hated on right now for saying his name without dumping a bucket of tar and a pentagram.
No, and here's the thing. It's been really hard for me to watch because, this LNC, the 20 to 22 LNC, is not an entirely new board. There's a lot of holdover from past boards. I spent 2 terms on the LNC. I spent a lot of time with a lot of these people, and a lot of them are people I'd come to consider really good friends up until recently. And the way they've approached things in the past year have really made me wonder what happened and what changed with them. Susan Hogarth used to be somebody I considered an idol of radicalism. She founded the Radical Caucus, and she was the don't give a shit libertarian and in your face libertarian, and she has turned full regime prag in the past year. Richard Longstreth is someone who I worked a lot with. The whole balanced budget for the LNC, which was mind-blowing that it took such a fight to get a balanced budget for the LNC for the first time. That was largely Richard Longstreth, Joe Bishop Henchman, and myself. Richard spent an entire night. He did not sleep between 2 LNC meetings, going over the budget, finding things. In the morning, hands them to me and Joe. It's these are the cuts we need to make. And it was a lot of me and Joe and Richard finding compromise to make the cuts work. And they were people who I had a lot of respect for. When I was on the LNC, the person who I shared the most similar voting record with And Chuck Moulton keeps a record of every single vote the LNC takes, and he publishes them at the end of every term before the convention. And you can see every vote and how every LNC member voted on every single vote. And I had the closest voting record, not with Karen Ann, who I was fairly good friends with and who endorsed me, not with Aaron Adams, who was a very close personal friend, but with Joe Bishop Henchman. And he was the leader of the pragmatists at the time, and I was seen as the radical representative on the LNC. And we had the closest voting record because when it came down to things like running a business, we recognized where good ideas were, and we put our politics aside to run the business of the party.
We need people to run it like a business. So it's like, I feel like we can't look at how, it's like we can't get an accurate portrayal of a picture of how shitty the removal motion was without going back in time and looking at least the last 4 years on the LNC and watching the culture sort of do a nosedive.
And I think to you, like, to your point about the secret list and the hidden list and the non-transparent list, I was never on an LNC that had a secret list. Every communication we made to the LNC list was open and public for public scrutiny. Every single email was wide open for membership review and public scrutiny. And we didn't get along. There was infighting on the LNC, but it never got to this level.
Right. and infighting is normal because, you know, people fight with their families, they fight with their spouses, you fight with your friends, you know, but it's within a certain limit. You know, that's normal. The infighting that we've seen in the last year is not normal. Part of it is because we've had 2 former chairs, at least in the last 2 terms, not be tight with their officers. And that creates like a shitty culture of people not trusting each other and wondering what you're up to. So then you start with the perspective that someone is withholding information or they're my enemy. And that's not a good way to approach this. And then you have all of these conflicting alliances, and they're not always political, like you said. Sometimes they're just like your best friends. And so you're going to excuse your friend's crappy behavior because it's your friend. And then you let it go too long because it's your friend. And then you blow up and you rage vote your friend off of the LNC. And that sucks. And sometimes we need outside professional help. Like, it's kind of embarrassing, but we're not the only organization that might need to call in an outside mediator to work some of this shit through. But for crying out loud, like, we should never let it go.
There's an entire industry of professionals who are like professional business consultants who do board mediation. That's what they do for a living. And it's not hard to find them and track them down and to hire them to do shit like this. And what blew my mind was it seemed like that was the approach that was going. I was following the LNC list, and Laura Ebke had mentioned perhaps we need mediation. And Whitney had said she was contacting mediators in the area who could come to the meeting and work out something. And then just out of the blue, here's my list of charges. We're expelling Karen Ann. Yeah.
And I think that there was some stuff that happened on the invisible list that led up to that, and we'll never know. Here's what I would recommend. If we could fix it right now so that we don't have this problem going forward. If I'm not elected chair, if none of that ever happens, you know, there's no takeover, get a commitment from everybody who's publishing comments on the invisible list that if there's any major conflict like this, that you will redact everyone else's comments, but you'll publish your own so that we can see. And the more people that start doing that and just take accountability for their own words, you'll start to see some of the pieces come together.
I think we just need to get rid of the invisible list altogether. Get rid of the invisible list, because nothing has ever stopped LNC members from communicating with each other independently off the list. Nothing has ever stopped that. But it was when the chair put into place this secret list and gave people this other forum that they knew was secret and confidential and made it a group chat. I am the world's biggest proponent against group chats. Every time I get added to a Signal group, I just dump every meme on my phone until they remove me from it. Yeah, I think I think group chats, by their very nature, will inevitably lead to drama, infighting, and pettiness that just pisses off other people involved. And so by putting this behind closed doors in secret and telling people that nobody could view what they were saying, it just opened the doors for all the petty infighting that the LNC already did with itself to just cascade by involving other people.
Yes. Here's another thing that people need to take into consideration. What you do at the national level impacts the state parties. And it doesn't matter what your intention is. If you are picking a fight with someone who is very active, in another state party, and the loyalties are sort of mixed, like that's going to create conflict. You need to think about how your actions are going to impact people 2-3 steps ahead, and that didn't happen here. And that was really, like the Karen and Harlow's removal, it created drama in a lot of West Coast states. Like, it sucks. It sucks. And then I want to tell people, don't do that. Don't vote that certain way. And then they come to me with these grievances, like, you don't understand what this person said to me. You don't understand what they said. And I'm just like, holy shit, you're right. I didn't know that. I didn't understand that. This is like, it is a complete mess. I feel like the Libertarian Party, we're all about freedom, which is great because I'm all about freedom. I want to sell nukes and heroin to school children just like every other libertarian does. But we're not about personal responsibility. Like, why can't we be accountable for our own actions? I really would like us to be accountable for our own words and actions and not just scream, like, you hurt my feelings. That's violence. Like, words can be shitty without being violence. Yeah.
Right.
Does any of that
I feel like the biggest surprise to everyone here is that libertarians are surprised that other libertarians can be shitty people.
Yes. It's almost like you can be an asshole without violating the non-aggression principle. And a lot of LNC members, they didn't seem to they were afraid to word it that way. So what they really wanted to say was, we're voting off Karen Ann Harlos because she's been a massive jerk to us and you just don't realize it. Okay. But instead what they really said was, we're voting her off because she violated the NAP with words. I don't think that's true.
And I don't think they're prepared for the blowback. It's a comment I tried to make. So George Phillips, Uncle George, lovable Uncle George. I have a very odd relationship in my respect for George Phillips because he is one of the stalwarts of the Libertarian Party who has never wavered from libertarian support in 50 freaking years. And as wealthy as he is, he just dumps money at libertarian candidates, and he has been one of the most consistent supporters of libertarian candidates in New England and across the country in the party's history. But he was cheerleading for Karen Ann's removal as it was the greatest thing in the world, and his big cheerlead was this is stopping the Mises takeover. And I commented on his post, I'm like, George, this just handed the entire party to the Mises Caucus.
It really did. It's unfortunate.
I don't think people realize. I don't think the Prags realized what kind of blowback they set themselves up for, because they made Karen Ann a martyr. And if there's one thing Karen Ann is better at than being a secretary, it's being a martyr.
Yeah. So, no, even if you wanted Karen Ann removed, you shouldn't be cheering it on social media, because that's incredibly fucking tasteless. I'm not sure why we're confused about that, but don't be cheering for anyone's removal because it's incredibly tasteless. The people who did it that I disagree with, who I thought did it in bad faith and really did her wrong, I have to try to stay on civil terms with them anyway, so I can't trash talk everyone, but please, everyone else, stop trashing her and cheering that she was removed. It's in really poor taste. How are you going to work with everybody going forward when we inevitably do take over? Because we have a massive amount of delegate support and savvy infrastructure building as well. So good luck with that.
And it's not all new people coming out of nowhere.
Nope.
To prove the point to people, Angela's running for chair as the Mises Caucus candidate, and I've known Angela since before the Mises Caucus existed.
Yeah, so. I'm one of the very, very early members. I guess you could call me an original member, but not a founder. But yeah, I was around before, and I said in 2018 that I would be interested in running for LNC chair one day, but that I wouldn't do it until I thought I could bring in fundraising and I had more chair experience. So here we are, almost 4 years later, and I'm doing it. I'm sticking by my word,
All right.
And there are other people.
So you started this whole thing planning, I'm assuming, to run against Joe Bishop Henchman. And
yeah,
how does that change now that it looks like you're running against Nick Sarwark?
Oh, it's fantastic. I mean, that's talk about hand me, a basket of candy. It's a meta battle of good and evil. There's I'm not interested in trash talking people who are currently on the LNC, even though Karen Ann was voted off, and there've been a lot of bad things I think that have happened. Unfortunately, like that's not the only one. But I will say that I'm not a fan of Nick Sarwark. I don't have any trouble putting that out there. So, and I'm not the only one. Like this may blow everyone's mind, but there's a lot of people in the party who don't like this dude and think he's evil incarnate after he yelled "eat a dick" at the delegation.
Yeah, I did get like people who've been following LP internal politics for a long time, people who have been following me as long as I've been on the LNC, will remember back when I was the most vocal anti-Mises Caucus candidate because I spent too much time defending Nick from the Mises Caucus. And like Nick was someone I worked with. I had an incredible working relationship with him when he was chair and I was a region rep. And I worked very closely together for 2 terms on the LNC. And we usually were aligned on things as far as it came to running the business. Not how he talked to people or how he dealt with people in person or personally, but like as far as what he did as chair, I still think my first term on the LNC, Nick's second term, he was one of the best chairs that the party's ever had that term. Yeah. But like once Trump derangement syndrome and COVID kicked in, he just started to go downhill real quick. Somebody asked me a few months ago, it's like, what changed your mind and what turned you against Nick? And I said, he moved in next door.
Yeah.
I had an incredible working relationship with the guy when he lived in Phoenix and I lived in New Hampshire. And when he moved across the country and now he lives 2 doors down from me, dealing with him on a personal level, I have found him to be an egregiously distasteful human being and how he deals with the people around him.
Nick was the first person I think at the national level, along with Mike Shipley, who were very supportive of my 2017 congressional campaign when I was like fairly new to the national party. I was very new actually to the national party. And, they were really supportive of me. I became friends with Nick because we both worked in litigation, had like a little bit of a camaraderie there. And I maintained a friendship with him through the Mises Caucus launch and them attacking him. And I was like, that's okay. I got some issues with the US chair. I respect you professionally. We could stay friends. And then the lockdowns happened and he just went nuts on me. Like I am a super villain. And he was, I was like, what is happening?
It's January 6th. So Andrew points out January 6th might have been the turning point for Nick this year. When he really proved how unbearable he was. Like he went full blown. It was a terrorist attack. It was a coup. It was an attempted insurrection. And like I'm sitting here commenting, I'm like, I don't know. I think an insurrection takes planning. This looks like a riot, and it looks like what happens when a dog finally chases the car and catches it. Like, I don't think the rioters expected to get as far as they did. And once they got into the Capitol building, they had no clue what to do. Like, there was no plan.
They were walking behind a rope at one point. Like, they were literally on a path, and then you see them talking casually with security guards.
Yeah, and Andrew had said that the real terrorists were members of Congress, and Nick lost his mind. And like at that point, Nick started like intentionally distancing and segregating himself from LPNH and from other members in the party. Stopped being involved. All he had was negative things to say about people in his own community. He burned bridges with people that his wife was friends with and like participated in community events with, and like ruined her social life around here because of the way he treated people. And all of that was things that led up to him getting noted at the LPNH convention.
See, it's not just Mises Caucus takeover. There are serious dysfunctional issues within the organizations and some of the, main faces of it.
The Mises Caucus delegation at the LPNH convention was slightly less than half of the total delegates. 2/3 voted for Noda over Nick.
There you go. That says a lot. It's not just Mises Caucus takeover. It's that there are some people in this organization that do need to be noted because they're not good for it. Right. Especially in New Hampshire, because I would like to think that you guys with the Free State Project and everything else you got going on, like it's a pretty tight-knit community. It is the vibe.
It is. And that's the thing is like the Liberty community here in New Hampshire, especially here in Manchester, New Hampshire, is a community. Mm-hmm. Throughout the lockdown, we had weekly potluck dinners. Like the restaurants were forced to be closed. So a handful of the restaurants that were owned by libertarians and members of the community, we reached out to and said, you want to cater a private dinner?
Nice. Yeah.
And we would get 100 people to show up for a private dinner. We threw a barbecue. Me and Andrew Olding threw a barbecue right before PorcFest. I had like 60, 70 people just show up in the height of the lockdown, height of the pandemic, where people just didn't give a shit. They weren't willing to let the government destroy their lives. People started using the common spaces and our club spaces and commercial spaces for homeschooling, where like not everyone lost their job, but the schools were closed and parents weren't willing to like let their kids be subjected to just Zoom all day. So they pulled them from the public school programs and started homeschooling. And they worked out rotations where it was like one parent a day would do like 5 or 6 kids and run them through the homeschooling program in a common space. And like we built a stronger community through the lockdown, and Nick chose to attack that community and declare that community as wrong and say that community was hurting people and wage allegations of terrorism and people intentionally spreading viruses and hurting others, yet he still shows up to PorcFest.
Imagine, I actually didn't see him a single time at PorcFest, but I saw pictures of him lurking around like a freak. Imagine like being someone in the Middle East who you've seen your family get drone bombed and murdered at a wedding, and then hearing someone like Nick say that a protest at the White House with people wearing face paint was a terrorist attack. Like,
Andrew wants to ask, Angela, can you not run for chair so we can Noda Nick again, and then you can run after? As hilarious as I think that would be, I think it's a bad idea.
It would be funny if Noda came in second place, though, and Nick came in dead last. I am looking forward to running against him. I think it will be incredibly entertaining. I think it will be very rewarding for the delegates. I hope that he tries to plan some crazy thing against me. Maybe he'll have a PowerPoint presentation of my mean tweets. You know, he can consult with one of my other haters about that. I think it will be really fun. And
he'll pull up this show as an evidence file.
Yeah, that's fine. You know, like we're both litigators. We can have a trial. I think we should have a trial at in Reno 2022, you know, to whether or not, you know, the Mises Caucus is a bunch of, I don't know, alt-right, white nationalists, whatever, and whether or not Nick is a CIA plant. We can each present our arguments, you know, and then people can vote.
Well, his Twitter handle is NSA Arwark.
Nice.
So, all right. Well, his platform he's running on, apparently, according to the rumors, is a return to sanity. What are you running on?
Principled messaging, increasing our donor base, and increasing our membership.
Fantastic. We're over time. We are well over our hour. Thank you, everybody, for sticking around for the show. Angela, tell everyone where they can follow up with you and where they can learn more about your campaign.
If you want to read up about my campaign and things that are going on, you can visit angelamcardle.com. That's my website. If you're in California or Los Angeles and you want to join the LP, go to lplac.us. We have a protest event coming up on September 11th at the LA City Hall and also at the state capitol in Sacramento. And I've got details for all that stuff on my website and on the county website.
All right. And again, if you guys want to check out the social media links in the description, I'll add Angela's to that when we're done. For those of you watching this after the fact on Odyssey or other platforms. And until next time, be free. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed the show. If you want to catch more, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications for future episodes. You can follow me directly on Twitter at O'Donnell, the number 4NH, to keep up to date with what I'm working on. And if you want to be among the first to support this channel, check out our Patreon link in the description. And as always, don't forget to head on over to snexswag.com to get your freshest Liberty swag today. Until next time, be free, everybody.